We begin always prior to reading the Qur'an to ourselves or out loud with the phrase, A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. And that simply means that I seek refuge with Allah from the rejected Satan or the accursed Satan. And we're not talking about a visible demon or a visible shaitan or that kind of thing that's going to creep into your bathroom and do all kinds of havoc and all of that. When we talk about seeking refuge from shaitan, we're actually talking about seeking refuge from influences that are invisible, but that exist in you and around you. And by around you, I simply mean that if it's not prominently displayed in you as an evil tendency or a low-based tendency or a tendency to follow your lower passions, etc., if it doesn't manifest in you in that manner, then it's manifesting in somebody who looks like you outside of you. The shaitan, the devil, the demons, all of these things are part and parcel of what takes place within the human framework itself. It's not in a rock. It's not in a tree. It's not in a cloud. It is in a human, because the human being has been created by the source creator to monitor and regulate frequencies that are registering at all times, even in your sleep. These frequencies are registering on you and helping you to make certain decisions that will either take you further up the ladder of your human development or have you diminish in terms of your human worth, and the choice is up to you. So we seek refuge from those invisible influences that we use the word a'udhu for. And a'udhu is a very important word because it's the kind of refuge that you seek, not from anything physical as an enemy. A'udhu, we don't use that phrase in the Arabic language for anything visible or some encroaching army or something that we can see. We don't use a'udhu for that purpose. We only use the phrase a'udhu to refer to an invisible enemy. And again, that invisible enemy is in the form of frequencies, low-based, diminished human thinking and emotionality. That's what we're referring to. So Al-Fatiha begins Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, with Allah's signature, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. The definitive praise is owned by Allah, the creator, evolver, and sustainer of all systems of knowledge. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Maliki Yawmiddin, owner of the day of deen or judgment. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. It is you we service and it is you whom we seek help from. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Guide us along the straight and upwards path. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim, the path upon those whom you have bestowed your civilizing grace upon. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Not the path of those whom are inundated by anger, nor of those who go way astray. And when we say way astray, we're talking about astray from the goal that Allah has set as a mechanism within our human soul. That goal is to reach what's called paradise or Jannah. And once again, we say Salamun Alaikum to you all. It's a pleasure and an honor being with you once again after 2 weeks off, especially. Let me pull up my notes. So once again, thank you for joining us on this Sunday, October 24th, 2021. I am your international instructor, Benjamin Bilal, and we have a lot of information to share with you tonight. And the title of tonight's presentation is called The Two Readings, but this is 3.0. I did the two readings about a year or so ago, and we spoke about quite a few things. You might want to Google that in your email addresses and email notes and see what it was we said last time. We'll be going over some of that information tonight as a repeat, a necessary repeat for those who were there and need to be refreshed, also for those who were not there and will be hearing this for the first time. So put on your thinking caps, put on your scuba diving gear, and be ready for this level of information. It will be, I promise you, unlike anything that you've been involved with in terms of information, particularly in terms of the understanding of the Qur'an. Now, you might say, well, buddy, that's quite a boast. What are you saying? That you have more to explain to us than Imam W.D. Muhammad and these other scholars who have been in the world teaching for generations, decades and generations and so forth? No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I have a minuscule amount of knowledge compared to these illustrious minds that God has graced this earth with. All I'm saying is that I have taken what Imam W.D. Muhammad has delivered to us as information, and I am simply putting it under my electron microscope. So some of the movements that you didn't know his language was making, some of the connections, the atomic connections that his language was making with other concepts that he may not have spoken on, I'm making those attachments, those commentaries, those associations in the language. So if what I'm saying sounds different than what he's saying, you should say Alhamdulillah for the difference. That's what the scientist says when they put their eye on the microscope and see what's under the glass that's being magnified so many more times, hundreds of times, sometimes thousands of times larger than what you were looking at with your bare eyes. And this is such a mercy from Allah, especially to those who claim to be in the followership, if I might use that word, of Imam W.D. Muhammad, in the community or the whatever it is you want to call it. Association is what he called it. In the association of Imam W.D. Muhammad. This is a major, major blessing because it represents, in my humble opinion, the inheritance that was left beneath the wall ace or the Wallace. This is the inheritance that Wallace left for those people who purport to follow his language and logic. So we're talking about the two readings, and this is based on Surah 96 of the Qur'an, which reads in English, "Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot of blood. Read, and your Lord is most generous, the one who taught with the pen, taught man what he before knew not." Now, this is an English translation rendered by the translator, world-famous translator, Yusuf Ali. And we're going to go over what's being said here, but we're going to be using the benefit of Quranic insight in terms of Qur'anic-Arabic to explain what is left unexplained or what is left erroneously explained by Yusuf Ali and company. Let's begin here. It is said that the quote-unquote angel Gabriel, pronounced Jibra'il in the Arabic language, spoke these words to Muhammad while in a cave which was subsequently called Jabal an-Nur. That wasn't the name of that cave prior to this revelation being bestowed upon the heart of Muhammad the Prophet. Jabal an-Nur is the name that scholars gave to it after the fact. And Jabal an-Nur means the mountain of the light. Jabal is the name for mountain or hill, and an-Nur means the light. This word an-Nur is always given in its singular form. In fact, there is no plural form for the word nur, or this level of light that the Quran is speaking to. There's a plural for the word darkness, dhulumat, that means multiple darknesses, when Allah uses that in the Quran as a contrast to nur. So multiple darknesses simply means that there are many theorems, theories, and all of these other things that can put you in the dark. You can be in the dark economically, scientifically, philosophically, ideologically, and in all of these other ways that are ologies and invented by human minds. All of those things can put you in multiple levels of darkness. But when Allah brings His light is unified and unifying. It means that you should be able to go from economics, you should be able to enter into politics, you should be able to enter into academics, you should be able to enter into the culture. And what you are expressing as lifestyle and life decisions are actually all intertwined in agreement with each other. So your cultural life should not be diametrically opposed to what you're doing economically. Your academic life should not be the enemy of your political life or your cultural life. All of these aspects of human growth and development should be continuous and contiguous with each other, in agreement with each other. So what it is we are attempting to read is actually the agreement that Allah has clocked into creation called al-fitra. Al-fitra simply means the various patterns that Allah has clocked into created things. Everything created has a pattern, and that pattern is designed by the source creator to signal information to the mind. So again, this angel, in quotation marks, Gabriel or Jibrail, is said to have spoken these words to Muhammad while Muhammad was meditating in a cave that was at the time called a Hira, H-I-R-A, but was subsequently called Jabal an-Nur, meaning the mountain of the singular light. So if your light, your personal light, and what you think you know is not in agreement with the greater light that we're calling Qur'anic insight, based on Allah's fitrah, not based on your sciences, not based on your local theologies and ideologies. Your light, your personal light, is supposed to be related to the greater light, because that light is one. And Allah, as you know, is one. These consonants that form the word Hira are the consonants Ha and Ra, or in English we would say H-R. And they are normally used in words which signify new beginnings of things. And you'll find that connection in the logic of those letters in words not only in Arabic, but also in the English language. And it's a beautiful thing to witness in terms of how these consonants are interlingual. In ancient Egypt, they had a character called Heru, and he was the newbie on the block after his daddy Osiris had been crucified. Osiris is also known as Alsar. After Alsar, the wife of Alsar, who was known as Alset or Isis in the Greek language, she became pregnant with Heru or Horus, and he became the new one because HR, I repeat, is assigned to words that represent new beginnings. If I hire you for the job, you're new on the job. If a hero shows up, it's because the damsel in distress was at her last hope. And all of a sudden, the new guy, the hero, comes in to save the day. So you're going to find this meaning consistent in words, even in the English language, that have to do with new things. In the constellation called the zodiac, the first sign or signature in the zodiac is called Aries, and the A in Aries is consonantally connected to the letter H. They are what are called gutturals from the back of the throat. Ah, ah, ha, ha, from the back. Ja, ja. These letters are from the back of the throat. Ha, ha, ka, ka. These letters are from the back of the throat and therefore can be interchanged as far as linguistics are concerned. So Aries is also Heru, is also hero, is also all of these other words that mean new beginnings. Aries is the first sign in the zodiac, new beginnings. Now, the proponents of the above understanding of the Quran, which is said to have been spoken by the angel Gabriel to Muhammad in the cave of Hira, that's what the narrative says. It doesn't say that in the Quran, but it says that in the hadith narratives. Now, these narratives, however, need to be thoroughly examined We're living in the day and time of the examination of all language, especially that language that purports to support the language and logic of the Quran itself. Today, as we speak, there are serious scholars in Mecca who have taken upon themselves to re-examine every single hadith that has been produced. And their reason for doing that is that they said that the hadith literature are the primary reason why the Muslim world is as messed up as it is today. So they need to re-examine it, see what actually jives with Quranic wisdom and logic, what actually follows the locution of Quranic expression, and then hold on to those. But those that go diametrically opposed to what the Quran is advocating, those are the ones that they say they will work on dismissing. How they'll do that has yet to be seen, but these are words from the Meccan scholars, and we have it in articles and other things that we can share with you at a later date. So, as I said, there is no mentioning in the Quran of a cave called a Hira. Secondly, there is no mentioning of an angel named Jibra'il, or for that matter, that Jibra'il or Gabriel is in fact an angel. Jibra'il is mentioned a few times in the Quran, but never ever as a malaika, the Arabic word for angel. The Quran mentions the angels and Jibra'il, but it never says that Jibra'il himself, or itself, depending on the way you see this, is an actual angel in the form and function that Allah has assigned angels to in the Quran. Gabriel's name in the Quran is never attached to the adjective angel. I repeat, Jibra'il's name in the Quran is never attached to the adjective called angel. That's a descriptive term. The English word angel, in case you didn't know, is actually an offshoot of the word angle. The word angle came into the English language first, and thereafter they developed the word angel because originally angels were seen as angles of light. We know the Quran does say that angels are created from nur, they're created from light. So the Western thinkers who were pondering the Quran, as Allah asked all of us to do, they understood that light enters our atmosphere in angles. You will never ever see a ray of light from the sun come into your perspective straight down or straight across. It will always be on an angle. Look at the light coming through the trees in the morning. It's always on an angle. That's what they understood to be angels also. Light and its related frequencies. That's a lot to fathom. And we're talking about scientists who themselves consider all things in matter to be comprised of light or light codes. These are scientists who also propound that the human genetic framework is also light. The human nervous system that runs along the spine, the central nervous system, they also consider that to be light, and hence the name nerve and nervous is from the Arabic word nur. You've heard of neurology? That's the study of your nerves. So we're talking about people who are thinking on levels that have created monumental advancements in human thinking and human logic, while we're still here believing that these are creatures with wings popping out of their backs and floating in the air, disappearing, appearing as big as, the Empire State Building. And then all of a sudden, this is what we're left to think, because we have been presented, quote unquote, religion on the level of kindergarten language, as Imam Muhammad called it very early on in his career. So the challenge for each and every one of us is whether we want to remain on the kindergarten level or whether we want to graduate. And Nunetics represents that graduation. And it's just one of many systems, I'm sure, that offer this kind of pull-up in language. Now, thirdly, it needs to be determined that Muhammad in this depiction, meaning the depiction in the cave with the angel wrestling with the quote-unquote angel Jibra'il, he's choking him, he's until he reads, he must read. I can't read, the first response. I'm not a reader. And then the third time, he began to recite these 5 verses that we just visited, according to the narrative, the hadith narrative, not according to the Qur'an. So you can believe in the story as much as you want to and use it for whatever purposes suits your fancy. But what we need to start doing as Muslims, I mean legitimate thinking Muslims, is understand how to separate the cultural information and narratives from what is actually in the Qur'an. Allah could have very easily at the beginning of Surah 96 said this was given to Muhammad in the cave of Hira. He could have mentioned Hira somewhere. He could have mentioned the angel Jibreel in there somewhere, but it's not in there. So I have no obligation to believe that that is the necessary scenario. Continuing. So it needs to be determined that Muhammad in this depiction is in fact the actual person in history and not a later fabrication intended to justify a need to measure up to the Christian deification of Christ. Now, Imam Muhammad warned us of this. I've heard other scholars speak on this, that many Muslim scholars in history made the blunder of attempting to measure up to the fantastic image that had been painted of Jesus the Christ, whom we know was merely a prophet and a messenger, but that had been presented by Christian leadership as the actual Son of God, astaghfirullah. And Muslims, in contending with their Christian counterparts, began to insert certain ideas into the body of Islamic thought that would make Muhammad a kind of super duper superhero figure related to God in ways that we are not, just like the Christians did with Jesus the Christ being spoken of as the flesh and blood Son of God. And most Christians believe in that language. It's because they're not in touch with the original language in which that Bible narrative was revealed. If they understood anything about the language of Aramaic, which is related to Arabic, if they understood anything about the language of a Hebrew, then they would know that the word for Son of God is not necessarily meaning the flesh and the blood offspring of a mother and a father. Semitic language is not Romance language. It's not the language of Europe and Europeans. It has a different approach in terms of what you need to do to gain information and understanding from that language. It's not like reading English. And many of the earlier versions of the Bible, I mean the Bibles that were actually written early on in English before the King James Version, when it said Son of God for Christ, it actually was spelled S-U-N and was later changed to S-O-N when the Council of Nicaea got together and decided that we have to sell this idea of Christ. In fact, one of the high bishops called it the fable of Christ and spoke about how beneficial it had been throughout all ages since they introduced it. So again, we're not privy, the average one of us, we're not privy to all of the shenanigans that have happened in the history of Christianity to turn Jesus from a human, a blessed human, into the unfathomable Son, physical Son of God. We're not aware of all of the shenanigans. Neither are Muslims, generally speaking, aware of the many shenanigans that took place to take Muhammad, who mentions himself in the Quran as Basharun Mithlukum, a mortal of flesh and blood, mortal like all of you. That's how Allah mentions the Prophet through the Prophet's own mouth. Qul, say, Ana basharun mithlukum. I am a mortal flesh and blood person like all of you. So that's to safeguard Muhammad from becoming a son of God. And that's probably the only reason why he has not become a son of God among Muslims. It has given us borderline tendencies in terms of worshiping Muhammad. And when I say borderline, I mean that it's not in the conscience of Muslims to worship Muhammad, but they have done a sophisticated job of implanting that idea, that subtle idea, into the subconscious minds of Muslims all around the world. If you're sitting in the Jummah and Allah's name is mentioned, you'll hear people say, Subhanahu wa ta'ala, probably whispering it under their breath. But when the name Muhammad is mentioned in the Jummah, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, I mean, as a chorus, more fervor than when they hear the name Allah. And in fact, if you're following all the rules, you shouldn't have said anything out loud during the Jummah. But we say it's all right to violate when it's Muhammad being mentioned. So we're just trying to tilt the scale back in the direction of balance. It's been pushed over into the extreme. And what we're not saying is that Muhammad is not the messenger of Allah or not a prophet of Allah. There's some stupid people online right now trying to pretend like that's my position. There's Allah, but there ain't, Muhammad is nothing. No, that would be crazy. How can he be nothing when he received the Qur'an? So don't think with the brains of mules and donkeys and sheep. Think with your human intelligence when you listen to this information, and then judge for yourself once you've gotten all of the information into one place. Continuing. A baby born as quote-unquote Jesus, who became the quote-unquote Son of God by way of a visit from this same angel Gabriel, who announced his mother Mary's imminent pregnancy. It is said in the Bible that Gabriel visited Mary and announced that she would become pregnant, or maybe has become pregnant, and that pregnancy would actually produce a baby that would be Christ in the world. All of this is symbolic language that the world has been sold as literal language. Another analogy from the Bible is that Jacob wrestled with an angel, there's the angel again, from darkness until daybreak, and defeated God's angel. Can you believe that? Jacob wrestled with one of God's angels that many Christians will tell you was actually God in the form of an angel. Do you see how way out this can become? He wrestled with an angel who was actually God in the form of an angel and beat him? So he wrestled with him from darkness until daybreak, and he defeated him after dislocating Jacob's thigh bone. Many are not aware that the name Gabriel in Arabic, pronounced as Jibrail, means bone setter. Now, if you're not yet understanding how the Quran was revealed in order to correct the incorrect and erroneous concepts that were left in the world by these previous scriptures and their misinterpretations, most times intentional misinterpretations. If you're not understanding how the Quran is in the world to not only give us guidance, whoever chooses to accept it, not just Middle Easterners, anybody who chooses to accept the Quran becomes their Imam, their leader. But it is also here to reset the bar of potential excellence that other faith groups can come into if they also adopt Quranic methodology, the understanding that comes along with the proper methodology for understanding the Quran, and then begin to apply it to their own accepted scriptures in order to make the corrections on their scriptures. What's going to happen eventually is that they're going to say, my scripture has become secondary, or I should dismiss it altogether because there's too much corruption in these previous scriptures. So we have to get away from the lie that the Quran is for Muslims, quote unquote. You can't even touch it if you're not a Shahadatain Muslim, verified by people that we can go to. Is he really a Muslim? Okay, he can touch my Quran. That kind of foolishness is what I'm talking about. So in the same way that Jacob experienced a name change after wrestling with the angel, i.e. God, Muhammad, who was known only as Ahmed at the time. Let me repeat that. When the experience that supposedly happened in the cave Hira happened, Muhammad, the one we now know to be called Muhammad, was only known as Ahmed at that time. The early history of Muhammad is what we're speaking to now, when revelation first began to dawn upon his qalb, or his heart, or his core. Ahmed experienced the conferment of a title after the revelation began to dawn on him, and that title was Muhammad, one who is Hamad. Mu, in this case, means one who is, and it is the prefix that is given to most nouns that are referring to people, although it does refer to other things also. If we say Musalla, that's not a person, but it should be respected in the same way that you respect a human person when you are in Allah's Musalla, or a Musalla dedicated to the service of Allah. So his name was Ahmed. However, his title became Muhammad. So that's the second lesson for this evening, that many of the names that you're looking at in the Quran for prophets and messengers are actually titles that describe the nature of the message, especially that they were blessed to bring to the people they were assigned to as teachers. Isa has a meaning, and it doesn't mean Jesus. Musa has a meaning. You can see that prefix in the front of his name also, Musa. And the meaning of Musa is not exactly what the word Moses means. Ibrahim has a meaning according to the Quranic way of understanding this language, and it does not mean what Abraham or Abraham means in previous scripture. Keep in mind, the Quran came to make corrections on previous scriptures. So for us to willy-nilly say, Abraham, that's Ibrahim, or Ibrahim, that's Abraham in the Bible. Oh, Musa, that's Moses in the Bible. That's what Muslim scholars were trained to do, and that's the reason why our Quranic conceptions have become contaminated. And we're walking around believing that we know the Quran, but we're only knowing the Quran by virtue of interpretations that have been sold to us by Muslim scholars of the past who conferred with priests and rabbis of the past to get the meanings for Quranic language and words and terms and themes. So all you have in the Quran as interpretation is really a refurbished Christianity and Judaism.